Dishonored is like doing 90 on the freeway, weaving in and out of traffic, and then a cop pulls you over and asks, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And you really want to say, apparently not fast enough because you caught up. But you can't say that because you'll probably lose your license. Released on PC, 360, and PS3 nearly 400 years ago, the game is another one of those love it or hate it scenarios where, depending on how you decided to play it the first time through, it'll either be a frustrating quick load simulator or a wonderful thrill ride. A neck-stabbing symphony, accented with gunshot drum rolls and the squishing sound of high-velocity bolts to the brain pan. It's a game that gives you 3 distinct paths through it and caters completely to all 3. It's a better RPG than most actual RPGs, and like IGN is fond of saying, there's a little something for everyone. This review is spoiler-free, so watch without worry, and let's dig in, shall we? Dishonored was terrible to get running. And I should probably temper all of this with a little disclaimer. See, I'm one of those type of guys who has one of those kinds of computers where if a game is going to have a problem, I'm going to experience that problem and all the other problems that are out there, obscure or otherwise. Take this all with a grain of salt. You might not experience any of these problems, but this section of the video is here specifically for you people who are having problems getting the game running, so that you know what you can do to get it running properly. Hopefully this helps you. So all you people out there are like, "Oh, I never had any of those problems." I don't care. This isn't for you. Skip it. First, I had an issue where the game would boot all the way to the main menu, then crash after the loading screen. I tried everything I can think of and everything I saw on Google searches. Then I found this obscure site that had an even more obscure fix. Turns out I needed to go into my save folder, delete everything inside of it, then turn on cloud saves in Steam. Oddly enough, that fixed the issue. Okie doke. Meanwhile, Timeshares, one of the guys I do my podcast with, he had no problem running the game because he was playing on console. Touché. I guess the consoles win this round, yeah? Then after I fixed this, I had this problem where the game would just minimize while I was playing it, but it only happened when I would bring the game back up to full screen and hit the W key. Anytime this would happen, I'd have to save the game and exit and then restart. The only fix I have seen for this is to start the game in windowed mode through Steam. Then when you're in game, you have to set the game to play at the resolution of your desktop, which meant I had to play the game at 4K if I left my resolution that way. This forced me to change my desktop resolution to 1080p whenever I booted up the game. Eventually, however, the game just started working. I played it at full screen 1440p without any problems. But unfortunately, that was only after an entire playthrough in windowed mode that I, unfortunately, was unable to capture any footage for. Then as I was playing the DLC, it started minimizing again. But that was after like 20 hours of gameplay. It seemed like it was more of a problem with Windows being a douchebag than anything else that the game did specifically. So I would say that if you're having any of these problems with your game minimizing, the first thing you're going to want to do is do a malware scan. I know it sounds stupid. Just do a malware scan. You might have some things on your computer that's causing it, but one of the most common culprits I've seen is people playing in game mode. Like, Windows has this thing called game mode that if you turn it off, then it will stop minimizing some games. It's really weird. And then the other thing is you got to turn off notifications. Windows will want to notify you every time something happens. And sometimes it's notifying you in the background without even a notification, and that will cause your game to minimize. So turn off all the notifications. You don't need to know anything that Windows wants to tell you. Trust me. I'm not kidding when I say I have no idea why the game works now. Maybe it needed a restart. Maybe I needed to start the game in windowed, and once I did that, change it back to full screen. Either way, if you're having any of these issues, I suggest you try what I tried, and instead of playing in windowed mode, change it back to full screen once you've got it running stable. I think one of the strongest tools this game has is its art style. Though I remember when the game came out, there was a lot of talk about the proportions of the arms and how the hands were far too big. But I didn't really notice anything like that. And by notice, I mean get distracted by it. In fact, if anything, the art style really drew me into the world. It reminds me of a comic book, to be honest. Like, each character is designed to be a caricature instead of a representation of a real person. And not only does that lend a ton of personality to the characters, but it also helps to distinguish one character from another. And look, I understand that we're all used to seeing some sort of realism. Even though the more real something looks to me, the more fake it seems. We keep striving for this blandish dishwater look of realism. Am I the only one that remembers how people were pissed off about the art style of Wind Waker? I mean, that game looked amazing, especially back then, on that old-ass hardware. Shit. And it's not like the PS3 was some powerhouse of tech, but still, consumers are so damn insistent on cutting-edge graphics because these goddamn machines that we play these games on cost so much money that we want to justify the purchase of bleeding-edge graphics. I much prefer to see the style over substance in this regard. I posted this argument about DRM on Twitter. I said that people are always arguing about how game studios put millions in resources into games and pirates feel entitled to it. And my response to that is, so that you're saying that because other people steal things, game studios are entitled to my privacy and my CPU cycles. Who's really entitled here? I mean, is it the pirates or the game companies? And someone responded that there wouldn't be any indie games if it weren't for DRM. Like, I can think of about 20 other reasons why I buy indie games, but DRM is not one of them. I mean, think about how stupid this argument is. Indie games don't have DRM, but then they release on Steam, which is exactly DRM. Like, do you see how this holds no water at all? The point is, I play a lot of indie games for the graphics, not because they're awesome, but because they're usually awesome looking. Either because they evoke a sense of nostalgia, like in Dusk, or because they just plain old look cool as shit, like in Fallen Aces. It's all about the art style for me, people. It's not about fidelity. These are two different aspects, and one isn't always more important as another. For example, the texture work in this game is sort of muddy, and that is to be expected from a game that originally came out on the PS3 and 360, but I don't think that's why they're muddy, because I think, and I might be wrong here, but I think it comes down to a stylistic choice. Textures have a hand-painted feel, not unlike the art style of Disco Elysium, for example. They didn't go the route of photorealistic, which I think was a great choice. The architecture design is pretty impressive as well. It has this Victorian steampunk theme going for it, and it really works. And the design of the guards are all varied and unique. The standouts are the Overseers, which look just as evil as the Outsider. The weapons are varied and unique as well. The pistol is a flintlock with glowing lights, and each time you upgrade your weapons, little details get added to the model. The sword is one of my favorite things. Like, it's a really long, collapsible baton, and it makes this cool little sound when you collapse it down. The Outsider's realm is interesting as well. It's like the realm is your mind, and each little floating island is a fragment of your memory. Or, even more accurate, the past, present, and future are tangled up with each other. There's like big whales floating in the sky, candelabras suspended in the air, lampposts swinging back and forth like buoys in the ocean. The theme of an ocean-based economy and the mystical nature of the Outsider really show through well in these sequences. The standout missions, as far as graphics are concerned, is the party at the Boyle Estates. There's confetti going off in little explosions, there's a piano you can play. Badly. And each member of the party is wearing a mask, and quite a few of the partygoers are wearing totally unique masks. The dresses, the masks, the various foods laying out on tables, all of this lends an air of believability to the party and makes it feel like a feasible place that could exist. Okay, sound. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys know where I'm gonna go with this, but just bear with me here. Sound is a bit of a strange topic for this type of game. See, there's a lot of good to say about the sound in the game. The positional audio is functional, I guess. The sound effects are good. The stabbing sounds are meaty. The gunshots are loud as hell, like you would think a flintlock would sound. And the sounds for when stealth or broken are, well, I think they're kind of genius, honestly. See, there's nothing in this game that sounds anything like them, which is very important when you're doing a ghost run, because sometimes these enemies can see you from clear across the damn map. And sometimes it's not super obvious when someone has seen you, because the little lightning bolts above people's heads, they shrink when the enemy's far away. So if this sound didn't play every time I broke stealth, then playing a ghost run would be not only more frustrating, but also far more so due to the fact that you'd be getting through the entire level without knowing you've broken stealth. But if we're going to talk about the sound of Dishonored, we need to talk about the music. And, well, there's really not a whole lot of it, honestly. The whole soundtrack is maybe 40 minutes long, and that's because there's not much music in the game. Which makes a lot of sense, actually. See, it's already hard enough to hear what's going on in the environment at times, what with all the background noise and loudspeaker announcements. And when people are talking, it's kind of hard to hear them in the base game without zooming in on them. So there was this constant music playing in the background. It would really muddy up the works, and thankfully the game doesn't do much of that. Though there were plenty of times where I wish there wasn't any music at all, because I tend to get easily distracted when there's too much going on all at once. What music is there can be described as the sound that a door makes when all the hinges have rusted. There's not many overtures or long protracted string compositions. All the tracks are there, it seems, to accompany cutscenes. Some tracks have, I guess it's a harpsichord, or maybe a harp, or maybe even a lute. Playing in these simple yet elegant compositions that perfectly portray the situation, as well as lend a lot of personality to the world. Like, the music actually fits the world you're in, which is something I can't say for a lot of other compositions in games. For example, a lot of games might want to portray the emotion, but give little thought to what the instruments in a world sound like. But the music in Dishonored makes use of a lot of interesting sounds. I will say this, it's all rather fitting. But then you beat the game and... well, it's jarring. I feel like this is a song that Raph did with his band, and it's not bad, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's such a departure from what led up to that, well, you know what, whatever. His band is actually pretty good, so I'm not gonna talk shit. The voice actors are great, and it takes on a serious tone without being grim dark. Piero is a standout, as his voice has a lot of character, but so is Samuel. Actually, Samuel is my favorite character. Overall, the sound design is very good. I'm just disappointed that this game didn't go the route of the later game, Prey, which... please let me play that game next. Tell me in the comments how bad you want it. And what I mean by that is that they didn't really signal where enemies are in the world by allowing you to hear them, like footsteps like in Thief. But I'm going to go into that more in depth in the gameplay section, because those elements are not really sound elements. I mean, they are sound elements, but they're actually gameplay elements. They actually add to gameplay when they're there. I can't emphasize this enough, people. Most TVs have left and right speakers. Start using positional audio, god damn it. Please let me know where people are by sound. It helps. Please stop eliminating sound. Before I go into my rant about gameplay, let's talk about sound design in the first mission, and how it's both an excellently designed level, on par with some of the greats from games like Thief, but also how it stumbles in some key places, and how that may bias the player in their playthrough going forward. Dishonored lacks footsteps. It's not that they aren't present at all, I mean they are in there, you just can't hear the damn things over the loudspeaker blasting or the background noise in a level. You could mix everything down, of course, but it doesn't really make a difference because the game wasn't designed to have you navigate by sound like Thief. And because of this, the game has to rely on wall hacks to give you the location of enemies. Even if you could hear the footsteps, it wouldn't likely be a great indicator of where an enemy is in a level, because the reverb system in the game is nowhere near as good as the system found in Thief. So the only thing left to keep you safe and hidden is hiding, so let's talk about the stealth. First off, what is this crawl height? I mean, the speed is nice, but your head is always popping out over cover, which means people are going to see you, or at least you think they're going to see you, and the cover that is large enough to shield you unfortunately requires you to peek around the corner to see if someone's coming, and half the time someone is coming, and you're either getting caught or making a high adrenaline escape or pulling off some high-level assassin moves, but none of this is a problem, okay? I'm not going to say that's a problem. But I will say that now that I think about it, I don't think I ever used the peeking mechanic all that much because, I mean, it was kind of made redundant by wall hacks. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and rewind a little bit because in order to give you context to what I'm about to say, I need to kind of give you some background. After the missions, you will be brought back to your base of operations to rest and update yourself on how the mission went and what the status of your work is so far. This time back at the base is also used to turn in blueprints, upgrade your weapons, which I love. This upgrade system is pretty cool. It actually makes you feel like you have changed the way you play the game. But I just wish that some of these upgrades would have opened up sooner, or that there was a new game plus mode where I could start each level with all of my gear, because here's the thing. There's this problem in the game when you're using blink. Sometimes you'll blink while standing up, and in a game like Thief, if you're standing and walking up behind someone, that person will not immediately turn around the moment you take your first steps. But in Dishonored, they do. This is a problem due to two reasons. First is the crouch height. It's barely crouching low enough to tell you that you're crouching. And the hand position on a blade is often not enough sometimes in order for you to see that you're actually crouching. And what'll happen is that you'll blink behind a guard, take your first step behind them, and then try to choke them, but you'll find that choking is disabled, and then they all of a sudden get the little lightning bolts over the head, turn around, and discover you. The stealth upgrades make it so that you can walk just as silent when crouched as you are when standing. And after I got those upgrades, mystically the amount of guards turning around on me out of nowhere was drastically reduced. Now what they could have done is make it so that the guards don't turn around immediately, and maybe don't disable the choke. Like, if I get to the choke in time, don't punish me for mistaking the standing pose for the crouching one in the, quarter of a second that I have to realize I've done it. Or like in Thief 4, which this will probably be the only time that I give this game any praise for anything. In Thief 4, it was super obvious that you were crouching because of the screen effects. I wouldn't say that you need to go that far, but if the crouch was lower and the crouch walk speed was a bit slower, it might be a lot easier to tell when you're in stealth. Then again, I might be the only person who encountered any of this, and all this is a moot point. The gameplay in Dishonored is, aside from those little hiccups, it's just top-notch stuff, man. Most of the time, it sort of gets in its way, though, with like weird systems that don't make a whole lot of sense. Like take sleep darts, for instance. Whenever I'm trying to do stealth, I'm usually trying to do a ghost run, which means don't get seen, don't kill anyone. If you have two enemies looking at each other and you sleep dart one of them, even if you're in the first level of time bend, this will not only alert the enemy, but if you're anywhere out in the open when you do this, the enemy will know exactly where you are, and sometimes they know exactly where you are even when you're hiding around a corner, or through walls, or on top of roofs, far enough away that they couldn't have possibly seen you do this. Basically, it breaks your stealth, so what's the point of this item? Like, the fact that it breaks stealth really got in the way of me ever using it. Even though it is a great item that can put people to sleep even if they've seen you. It's caused because of a limitation enforced by the developers. Where everything else in the game is screaming at you to exploit it, this one thing is like, no, you can't exploit this. So because you can't simply sit on the roof and take out an entire room from the rafters, knocking them out with well-placed and rapid darts to the cranium, you're forced to sit on the ground choking people out. And that sort of sucks, because a lot of the time the game is encouraging you to go to the rooftops, but then the game puts you into situations where if you want to get as much of the loot as you can, you need to engage the enemies on the ground, or time their patrols to get around them. And this isn't too much of a hassle, as you'll find out later in this review, but it makes you wish that you had a dart that you could use to put people to sleep, when the patrol is a little crazy and you just don't want to deal with it. And honestly, this limitation doesn't make sense for two reasons. First off, it doesn't make sense that it immediately takes you out of stealth. That would mean each guard in this game, regardless of their intelligence level, is able to do visual calculus on par with that guy from A Beautiful Mind. But the most important reason is that there's already an excellent limitation in the game. The game limits you to 10 of these things per level, so they have to be used sparingly. Why then would you make them useless by making it so that you can't use them and you can only use them in the tiniest of situations? Like, you have to think about it this way. The darts are used to take people out from long range. If you're doing this stuff long range, then it makes sense that you don't have the full lay of the land, you don't know who's behind a corner and all that kind of shit, or who's looking at the guy you're aiming at, because, the wall hacks has a short range, so there's a chance you're not seeing somebody who's looking right at the guy you're about to shoot. So that also means that 9 times out of 10, when you're using sleep darts, you're going to break your stealth and alert everyone to your presence because you couldn't tell if somebody, 20 feet away was watching your target. And there's no way for you to know that. There's no way for you to know that. So it's very trial and error. And trial and error in stealth games is the most frustrating shit possible because sometimes it makes you start over events from 5 frickin' minutes ago because you couldn't foresee a terrible event, or you have to sit there and quick save every 5 seconds. It's annoying. And I can prove that this system is screwed. Watch how sometimes when I'm far enough away and fully covered, how the AI sees the guy get darted, gets alerted, but can't see me.
We'll meet again.
But the lightning bolts appear over their head. They just don't know how to find me or can't pathfind their way to me. Like, look, he looks so super confused, he doesn't know what to do. It's like, oh, do I go look for him? I don't know. I know that somebody did this, but I don't know where they are. Here's another inconsistency that lends to the player at first not understanding why they're breaking stealth. The AI will not be alerted when they find a guard sleeping face down in the dirt with a dart hanging out of their head, but they will if they see the guard get hit by the dart. I mean, if this was about alerting the guards to your presence, then I imagine finding any knocked out guard with a dart in them would be sign enough that you were there and break your ghost rating regardless. But it doesn't. All things combined, it's one of those ways that the game feels inconsistent with its rules, and it, just like I said in the Deus Ex review, when you don't have consistent rules to live by, the player tends to avoid whatever system is proving itself to be unreliable. And that's exactly what happened to me in this case. I pretty much always avoided using sleep darts, except when I got a wild hair up my ass to try it again, or a patrol path was too unpredictable. Then I would immediately be reminded why I don't use them because someone in another room saw me use a dart and comes physically around the corner right towards me and hiding in cover. There's another thing that breaks stealth, like scripted events. Take the first time you meet Granny Rags, for instance. When you meet her, there's some bottle street thugs outside banging on her door. Now, no matter what you do here, you cannot take these guys out while they're clustered up because the guy at the door is scripted to turn around the moment you start choking someone. This isn't because I choked the guy out just as he was about to turn around, or because the sound of me choking him made him turn around. As previously established in the video, if you alert someone by making a noise, this shows the lightning bolts over their heads before they even turn around to see you. In fact, to further back up this claim, this guy will sit at this door permanently until you do something to the guys behind him. Whether that be knocking them out or bending time to sleep dart them all, by the time you get to the guy at the door, he will have already been alerted before he even sees you. That mechanic is hella dumb. See, he knows that I'm there even though he can't see me, which makes sense in a weird way, but if we're going off of detected, then the AI should have to see where I am before they can detect me. It just doesn't make logical sense to me. But notice how the guy can sit there all day knocking on the door, but only stops when I start taking out his goons. And it's not even when you take out one of his goons, it's when you start choking out the last one. Watch this clip.
What? Are you asleep? Get up. I know you're here. Gotcha. Come on, let's get this guy. This is gonna... Wake up, Dan. Where are you?
On my 4th try, I managed to knock the guy out with a sleep dart from far away, and for whatever reason, the guy doesn't detect me this time. The only difference is my distance from him.
Are you asleep? Get up.
So do you see what I'm talking about here? It's super inconsistent. When I first played this game, the first thing I tried to do was play it like Thief. I think in my old review of Dishonored, which is a piece of garbage, just don't even watch it, I think I mentioned that. I mean, the game was literally marketed as a spiritual successor to Thief, so day one, when I finally got my hands on it, well, You can imagine how that went with everything I said previously. The powers, while there's not a lot of them, they combine in really interesting ways and fun ways to help you not only problem solve, but style on enemies in hilarious ways. Take a look at this montage.
Oh, there went my invitation.
Someone's been killed. Firing. Stand clear.
The first and most obvious power is Blink, and I can't overstate the importance of this skill. It's the first one you get, and it's both for mobility but also for height, because the enemies have a real hard time seeing you at any other height other than eye level. So you could be within their periphery, just above their heads, and chances are they won't see you, which allows you to do a drop attack. Or you could do things like blink behind an enemy that's closing distance on you, or switch to cover without being seen. Its utility is both for maintaining stealth, getting the drop on enemies, and for climbing to places that would normally be out of reach. When it's fully upgraded, it allows you to blink nearly half a football field away. It's awesome. Then you have Time Bend, which does exactly what it sounds like it does. It slows down time, and at full upgrade you can pop it, casually walk in front of someone, and blink away before they can even see you. And when you combine these powers with wall hacks, you can see the direction every guard is looking, and wait for the moment when they're all looking away, and time stop and blink right past them before they have a chance to turn around and ruin your run. It's fantastic. I look at these powers as facilitating stealth, but that isn't all they do. They all have dual purposes, so if we look at it this way, Blink has multiple uses. You can use it to reach high places, you can use it to get above a tall boy and do a plunging attack, and you can use it to escape when you're just about to be discovered. Time Stop can be used to complete objectives without being seen, but it can also be used to line up headshots and take out entire groups of enemies before they can react. Possession is one of my favorite skills, and I never knew how powerful it was until I attempted my ghost run. Being able to possess a rat can get you into vents that lead directly to places you would normally have to stealth into, bypassing many of the challenges, but it can also be used to sneak up behind an enemy and knock them out. Another use is just plain old stealth. Possess a rat and walk right past entire rooms of guards and re-emerge when in cover. Combine Time Stop with Possession, and you can sneak into any room and choke out every last person before they even know what's happened. Now I know there's achievements for playing through the game without buying a single power-up, and that's fine. That seems more like a third playthrough kind of thing to me, but imagine trying to stealth run this game, first time, with no powers. It was a goddamn nightmare because of all the trial and error involved in doing something like that, because a lot of enemies have these weird patrol routes where they'll lean on a guardrail, then 2 seconds later they'll turn around. Then there's times where they have literally eyes in the back of their head. And I'm sure that playing the game this way absolutely sullied my opinion on it the very first time I did that all those years back.
Be out of funkin' wagnalls. You know this.
Because not only is that not how the designers intended you to play it, but it's also subjectively and maybe objectively the worst way to play this game.
Funky biscuits.
The levels, the sound system, and patrol routes were not optimized for you to play it this way.
Frick.
You piece of
Caca.
To access most of the stealth run areas where you're safe from the guard's cone of vision and never have to stealth through areas that they're patrolling, second level and blink and jump height both need to be upgraded, and sometimes you need to possess a rat just to go through a vent, and doing a stealth run without powers is definitely hard mode due to the trial and error that's involved. Basically, Dishonored, when played in this manner, is quick load the video game. It's especially if, while doing all of this, you're also trying for a perfect stealth run. I mean, the first level actually does an excellent job of operating within these limitations because it was designed to be played by someone who doesn't have any powers. I've actually finished this level about 20 times. I did this so that I can learn the patrol routes so well that I could stealth through the entire level by not only being not seen, but also by not knocking out a single enemy. So let's go beat by beat with this level so that you can see all the tricks that it employs to not only teach the player how the game works, but to get the player information subtly. So you'll start off in your cell. You're given a key, and just outside of your cell is a weapon and some money. The first encounter with the guard can go down in many ways. Each way teaches you a different style of play. First off, you could do what I did in this video and ghost run your way through. Playing it this way shows you that the guard's line of sight is usually pretty short, and as long as you're not hanging out in the open, they won't see you. This guard with his back to you is there to teach you about stealth kills and choke. See, these two dudes, they talk for a little while, and if you wait until Skinny Boy walks away, Beefy Boy turns his back and allows you to do the dirty on this poor unsuspecting man. The patrol is timed so that you have enough time to knock out the guards and hide his body before they come back. There is a distinct lack of guards who catch you unawares by coming around a corner you could never have predicted, which actually happens a lot in later missions. In fact, every encounter in this first level is so well designed that the player is never caught off guard by an enemy they haven't seen because the important guards are shown from the start. Like this lone guard walking down a hallway in front of you. It's time to pass you the moment you enter this walkway, or this guard who has his back conveniently turned to you. You open the door and there he is, vulnerable, holding the key you need. This event here in the courtyard is really interesting. First, you enter while a guard is making his way down the steps, and no matter what route you take around, there's plenty of cover for you to snake your way around, and by the time you get to the other end of the courtyard, the guard with the key is standing near the ramp, just waiting for you to steal it, and the other guard is too far away to see you do it. But at the end of this area, that's where things get a little funky. See, at this point, you're supposed to do something that sort of violates every law of stealth that I can think of. You're supposed to blow up this door with high explosives. Now, when I told you that I did this area 20 times, it wasn't just because I was trying to learn the level. It's actually because my stealth was getting broken by things I couldn't realize would break my stealth. First off, I should explain something. In my mind, when I think of ghost running a level, I think of no blackjack runs or suit runs in Hitman. What I don't think of is knocking out every single enemy in a level because, I mean, the term ghost means no one knew you were there. But if you choke everyone in a level unconscious, they're definitely going to know you were there. But this level teaches you, after 20 runs, that this is not the way to do a ghost run, because when you blow open this door, not only will enemies on this side of this automatic door automatically know where you are hiding, psychically, even if you were hiding before the bomb even went off, but the entire level comes running to find you. I ended up, after several tries, having to backtrack through the level and knock out every single person there. And even after doing that, the game spawned in 2 more people to come and find me. Luckily, they couldn't find me in this dog cage, but damn, that's really not intuitive. Then, if you do all this right, there's still a chance that you'll be seen by guards standing on the wall clear across the lake, and because they're so far away, it's really difficult to know if your stealth has been broken until you get to the end of the level and get disappointed that you didn't get credit for a ghost run. After this level though, this never happens again. So for the most part, when you break stealth, you know you've broken it. So I never had a mission where I got to the end and found out that I needed to do it all over again. So to the game's credit, it does that really well. What it doesn't do is carry over any of the design tricks from that first level over into the main missions, because if you're trying to do a ghost run without powers, you will be quick loading a lot unless you know the patrol routes of every guard. Now that sounds like a bad thing, and it can be, depending on what kind of gamer you are. If you're the type of gamer that likes to master levels, well then this game is probably one of the best in that regard because you know the routes and locations of all the guards. It feels super satisfying to beat a level in one try without reloading and without being seen. I guess it's confession time, once again, but my doctor recently prescribed me Wellbutrin. It's a dopamine inhibitor. What I have noticed since I started taking it is that I actually like taking my time with games now. I mean, I really enjoyed the act of playing these levels until I got so good at them, until I was like a pro gamer douchebag styling on Twitch, you know? It felt really damn good. I don't know if that's a dopamine talking, but man, what a change in my attitude towards this game from the last time I played it. Like, maybe it's just because I'm hot off the heels of playing Deus Ex, and slipping into this game was like slipping on a comfortable old pair of shoes, but it was fantastic. There's something that doesn't fare as well, and that's the sword-to-sword combat. See, for some reason, there's this thing that enemies do when they're in the middle of an animation for a special attack or aiming a gun. They momentarily become immune to damage. I have no idea why this is, but it is. The result is that while you're focused on this guy, charging up to blow fire on you, you can't defend the attacks coming from the guys flanking you. It's killed me more than once and it's annoying as hell. For stealth, there's other little annoyances, like if you blink behind someone and hit the choke key immediately, even though the enemy doesn't have full detection meter and still has their back to you, you won't be able to choke them out. That's because detection is set to take precedence over choking, even if the enemy is still technically vulnerable. Quite a few stealth runs screwed up by this little ditty, I'll tell you that. Basically, the reason I enjoyed this game so much was not because gameplay was perfect, it was far from it. I enjoyed it because I avoided the things in the game that I just couldn't do, and I only learned what I couldn't do by the end of my first playthrough. You actually hear this a lot from people, that Dishonored is like one of those games you have to play a second time to really enjoy it, and I kind of agree. I think you could enjoy this on the first go-round if you know what to avoid, so you're welcome. What you can avoid is enemies that have eyes literally in the back of their head. They can actually see you when they're not looking at you, and not just out of their periphery, right? Like slightly out of their cone of vision or to the side. No, I mean, they can actually see you when their back is turned to you. When you're coming up from behind them, you know, where they're not supposed to have eyes, you know, where you facetiously tell your kids when they're in another room acting up and you go, hey, what are you doing? And they go, how did you know that? It's because I got eyes in the back of my head. I don't actually have eyes in the back of my head. I have dad sense. I can hear what's going on in another room, and I know you're doing something you're not supposed to do. Quit that shit. Stop doing that. You know what I mean? But these guys actually have eyes in the back of their head. It's not figurative. They can actually see you. And part of it is because the AI gets their states all screwed up, right? When they see a body laying on the floor, it's in that moment where they become psychic, okay? They don't have to see you to know that you're there. So what does that mean? That means that when they're in this state, that you actually cannot tell that they're in that state. Here's the biggest part of this. You can't tell when a guard is in an alerted state. You can't tell that, okay? Because they're not saying things like, I'm gonna find you, and even if they were, you couldn't hear them. Like, as I said before, you can't really hear anything that's going on in this game. And sometimes an enemy is in an alerted state, you don't know it, and they see you as you're coming up from behind them because they're suddenly psychic, right? Because their hearing and their sight and their senses is all turned up to 11 now, right? And you have no way of knowing when they're gonna stop being in that state, so you might be trying to come up behind them and choke them, not realizing that that's an automatic detection. Sorry, buddy. No matter what you do, you can't come up behind this guy, except when you can, right? It's super inconsistent, is the whole point of this. You are Corvo, handsome man about town. The Empress's guard to some and trained assassin to others. You're on your way back from a top secret mission across the ocean, bearing bad news. Back 2 days early, and you interrupt the assassination attempt on the Empress's life just in time to screw it up and get framed for the murder. The opening doesn't screw around with your expectations. It shows you exactly who's responsible for what went down, putting a face and a name to the men you'll be killing soon, and giving you a distant but yet satisfying goal to look forward to later. You wake up in a prison and are tortured by the soon-to-be dead. You're given a key and a letter from the Loyalists, a group of people who claim to be loyal to the now-dead Empress. Armed with a key to your cell, a sword, and some jingle-jangle in your pocket, you decide whether or not you'll be merciful to your captors or if you'll be cruel. That choice has profound effects on the story. Not that you'd know it, because here's the thing about the PC version of Dishonored, none of the cutscenes that are supposed to play between missions actually play. I went out on the internet, and bear with me here, this is actually fucked up. I might be going crazy. See, I went out on the internet to look for those mission videos and to look for a fix to this issue, and I swear I couldn't find a single post from Google on the problem or how to fix it. Actually, I played through this game twice before I realized, hey, isn't there supposed to be like a 2D video cutscene here explaining like what happened? Like if you poisoned the vat, isn't there supposed to be some explanation about the Weepers? Like what the hell? Like, I mean, I looked everywhere for an answer and couldn't find one. I went on my Discord and people told me I was crazy. Dishonored never had 2D animated cutscenes. You're imagining things. Are you sure you didn't dream it? Like, what the hell? I remember these cutscenes. They were partially animated and explained how Weepers increased when you did High Chaos and so on. I remember even what the backgrounds looked like. Maybe this is his first sign of dementia. First it's forgetting people's names, then it's imagining cutscenes in games that had no cutscenes. If I can't remember if Dishonored had cutscenes, how can you be sure of anything that I'm telling you? Like, am I fake news? Anyway, the story is by the numbers. It really is. Like, I never played through the game past the Boyle Estate mission until I did this review, but when I got rid of the Lord Regent, I knew what was going to happen because I've read books. I know history. In reality, I would have been surprised if they hadn't done a twist in the middle. Even with a bit of predictability, it was an engaging story that, to be honest, felt like a better RPG than most RPGs. Now, why do I say this? See, I like RPGs that let me make choices that are meaningful. This is rare enough. It's even rarer that those choices actually have consequences. Even rarer than that is a game that manages to not only do all that, but also manages to have those consequences not come from dialogue, but evolve naturally from the way you play. I think that most people, just like me, thought that punishing players with the worst ending for playing the game as an assassin was stupid. And it was for like myriad reasons. The largest case of goofy comes from the fact that you're playing as an assassin whose whole job title is guy who kills people for money, and the game expects you to make a decision naturally to not do the very thing that the game is marketed as. Yeah, that's dumb. But you know what? When you really think about it, it kind of makes sense. Like, look at it this way. You have a city that is currently in the grips of a plague that is turning people into those zombies from 28 Days Later, which is carried in on rats. And the entire town is infested with rats. And the rats aren't just carrying disease, but someone also taught them attack dog techniques. Now, the game doesn't punish you for killing your main targets. Those guys are supposed to die, to be honest. In fact, sparing these people's lives, probably the worst thing you could do to them. If you kill them, it's objectively better, like, they get to die quickly instead of slowly and painfully over the course of years. So the game doesn't penalize you for killing the main targets because those people are literally need to die. The guardsmen, on the other hand, have done nothing wrong. That's like blaming people who were drafted into Vietnam for the Vietnam War. These guys are just doing their jobs. They can't overthrow a government. Half of them don't even know how walls of light work. The other half of them probably can't even read, so not only do these people not deserve to die, but think about how this would affect the city, this city in particular. With the plague, the rats, the Bottle Street Gang, and Granny Rags, I mean, without all those guards, all those factors begin to weigh more heavily on the city, so as a natural progression of your actions, the city inevitably falls to ruin. The less people you kill, the less chaos ensues, the less innocent people die. This isn't the only way that the story changes based on what you decide to do. If you decide to poison the Bottle Street Distillery, then you don't have to have a boss battle with Granny Rags, and the entire city now becomes infected by the plague. If you're killing people left and right, and you're weakening the city even more, then when everyone turns on you, even Samuel, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you've totally destroyed the city by yourself. If you don't kill everyone, then some people survive the mid-game twist. And the final mission? Yeah, it plays out way differently. In fact, I was shocked by what a difference it made, which is why I say the game is a better RPG than most RPGs, because it clearly is. And anyone that disagrees with me is a big dumb doo-doo head who has penises for nipples and buttholes where their eyes are. For the most part, the story is solid, the characters are interesting, and their motives make sense. The game leaves a lot to the imagination, however. You won't be getting to know the people you work for in depth, and a lot of the background on the story and locations are left up to logs and books you find throughout the world. A lot of the storytelling is done through the environmental design, which is fantastic. Every room you enter tells a story about the people currently there, or the people who used to be there. Once you leave the city, about halfway through the game, things take a turn. You'll be infiltrating mostly military locations made of stone, brutalist architecture. The game also has a habit of revisiting a lot of areas. So for instance, the first 2 real missions you do start in the same exact part of the city, except for the fact that some things have been changed here and there. The second time you visit this side of Dunwall, there's a security tower, some weepers maybe, and the entry to the residential part of the city is closed off by a giant metal wall. So while some things have changed, it's still essentially the same place. The same can be said for the final mission, for the most part. I mean, you start off in a place where the very start of the game starts off, but I honestly don't see this as a problem. It's more like the story doing that hero's journey thing where the hero ends up right back where they started. So the structure of the story, while perhaps a little too predictable, is downright great at times, with interesting characters like the Outsider, Dowd, Granny Rags sprinkled about to spice things up. Where the story really shines is in how it reacts to your choices in the game, and can end up giving you a totally different experience depending on who you've chosen to help or harm. It's something that most RPGs haven't quite figured out how to do yet, and it's super refreshing to see, even if the game is nearly a decade old at this point. So in closing, I've played Dishonored 3 times for this review. One time as a murder hobo, another playthrough for that ghost achievement. Feels good. My third playthrough was another murder hobo run because, damn it, it's really fun. And this time around, I really stretched my wings and flew. I didn't do this because I thought I needed to in order to do this review. I mean, I sat down to write this review because I wanted more time to play the game. I mean, I went from not really liking this game to loving it. And I'm a little afraid to admit this. I think I like Dishonored a little better than Thief. Put down that pitchfork. I'm allowed to like new games. It's just that it does things a different enough than Thief. It's okay, you know what? Let me explain this actually. You know, it's like Warren Spector said when he was working with the team over at Looking Glass and he was working on Thief with them. He really pushed to make the team give the player more options for how they tackle certain things if they didn't want to do stealth. He was basically pushing for them to make Deus Ex, right? And I think that might be why I like Dishonored a little better than Thief, even though Thief does all of the stealth things way better than Dishonored. Dishonored has really fun combat to give you a little bit of a cathartic release when the AI detects you from across the map, or you you break stealth for some unknown reason. You can at least stab somebody right through the jaw. I mean, I give this game an 8 out of 10. It would have been higher, but because of some of the items becoming useless and the sometimes psychic and inconsistent AI, I have to dock some points. My first draft of this had me glowing about the game, giving it a 9 out of 10, but after getting the Ghost Run under my belt, I was immediately reminded of how this game makes me want to blow my brains out sometimes. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'd be hiding in some piece of cover only to find a guard somehow sees me, then comes running, and I would just sit there staring at the screen, lamenting the fact that I hadn't saved in the last 5 minutes. It's a great game that should always be played in high chaos. I mean, just like I said in my other review, oddly enough. If you actually want to have fun, ghosting can be fun, but it's riddled with so many inconsistencies that you will be quick loading saves constantly if you haven't already memorized the location of most of the enemies. I think that's actually why I enjoyed the game so much more this time around, because I was able to perfect stealth the first 5 missions because I've done these missions so many times in the past that I had the location of everything memorized, and I only started having problems once I got to missions I had never played before. And that's why people say that you'll enjoy this game more every time you beat it. That's because knowing the location of every hiding spot and every high beam allows you to avoid interacting with the AI in inconsistent ways. My only hope is that my experience with Dishonored 2 will be a little more predictable. If you like this video, hit the bell. If you don't hit the bell, goblins will come into your room at night and drain you of your vital boy or girl essences. And if you like me a lot and you want to give me butterfly kisses all over my face, donate to Patreon instead because I don't want herpes. And this has been a rant from Strat-Edgy, and now that you heard it, go play some games.